Welcome to the AI and Emotional Intelligence for Business Success series with Shane Gibson, of course, of closingbigger.net, and Nick Usborne of nickosborne.com and bemorehuman.ai. This is a little bit different than my regular podcast. As you know, years ago, I did a lot of interviews, but more recently, I've done a lot of rants. One person solo sort of talks about various aspects of sales and sales technology. But through interacting with Nick, and we'll share this story with you a bit more, we decided to do a three-part series. It's a bit of a trial around this topic of AI and emotional intelligence for business success. And this may actually find its way into its own podcast series, depending upon kind of the feedback that you as listeners give us and your interest in the topic. It might be a standalone series, but for today, we're going to start with 3. And so it's not a traditional interview format. It's collaborative discussion between Nick and myself. Of course, I'm going to bring insights from the business to business sales performance, social selling, AI sales tech aspect. And Nick approaches the business of AI from copywriting and marketing lenses. So, hey, Nick, thanks a lot for joining me today.
Happy to be here. And yeah, we should be totally doing this as a standalone series. It's a topic screaming to be addressed.
I think so. And one of our decisions was as an MVP quick launch, it was let's get some podcast episodes up on Spotify and iTunes and all the other fun places. And then we'll take it from there. So our first
we should say this isn't our first rodeo together. So how many years ago was it we started teaching together?
I don't know. We want to let people know we're this old. I mean, maybe just our audio only listeners have no idea how ancient this guy is behind the mic. but actually, we started working together in 1999.
Wow.
So that was 1999. I had just got back from South Africa after helping launch a direct sales company down there and doing some training with various companies. It's kind of my first big overseas gig. And the soft landing was at the Greater Vancouver Venture Center, which was one of BC's and definitely Vancouver's first entrepreneurial incubator center. And it was pretty ahead of its time. And I was coordinating the youth entrepreneur program. And Nick, you were heavily involved in coaching as well as teaching young and new entrepreneurs, because we had 2 programs there. But that's where we met. We met many years ago in that space. And we've stayed connected ever since. And a lot has changed, but nothing's changed, eh? It's kind of interesting from a marketing and sales perspective.
Yeah, we're still like singing the same song all these years later.
We are. And that was interesting is that, we've talked back and forth. Like we did there's a podcast somewhere back on our episodes that we did together. I'm going to find the link here later. And we had this discussion around conversational content creation, like in conversational marketing, and you, like, I got to find this podcast because, and this goes back like a decade or so ago, your whole thing is around popcorn content, that people are moving more and more to light snacks and content and not these deeper blog posts and videos and 30-minute. And you said, this is where the internet's going. And today, I mean, TikTok and Instagram and the real, all it is popcorn content. And so, you nailed it a long time ago. You saw that coming, which I thought was pretty cool. So today's episode is on the marriage of AI and messy humans. That's our topic, is really, how does this work? The algorithm and, natural language processing and generative AI, how does that mix up with like messy humans, and what's the value of having messy humans involved? So we've got 3 topics we're going to talk about: the undeniable productivity benefits of AI. Then we're going to talk about the roles of emotional intelligence and social intelligence in the use of artificial intelligence. And I think just in general in business as well, how important it is, and how messy humans help avoid the sameness trap, because I think a lot of sameness out there. So getting ahead of ourselves, Nick and I are going to wrap up each podcast episode of the next 3 episodes talking about a kind of a use case for artificial intelligence or a tool or platform we're using that we find useful. So that's one of the things that we're also going to be focusing on here. And so I'm going to, before I spend too much time talking here, because it's supposed to be an interview, I'm going to kick into the first question. And the first question is, our topic is a broad one, and it's the undeniable productivity benefits of AI. So pretty broad. Nick, why don't you kick it off? Is AI really delivering on the productivity hype?
I think whether it is yet, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it absolutely can. So just at an individual level, people like you and I doing research, doing analysis of a long document, asking for a synopsis of an entire book, which you can now do. So in terms of time saving and productivity, that's amazing. I think in a broader sense, if I look across the industry and I look at marketing automation as a whole, companies are looking at extraordinary productivity and cost benefits just through the automation of large parts of the marketing process.
So with that automation piece, I think about myself, and I'll take a step back. Recent statistic from CompTIA they shared, and CompTIA said that by the end of 2025, which feels like it's going to be tomorrow, pretty well, there'll be 85 million jobs lost globally to AI and its augmentation and automation. But there'll be 97 million new jobs or opportunities created as a result. So what they're saying is there's actually a net gain of like 12 million jobs globally. Now we know that many of those 85 million aren't actually going to be the 97 million to get those new jobs. But I also think about that productivity piece. So what I mean by that is it's not totally linear. It's not like Shane loses a job bricklaying and a machine takes it over and now he's doing a different job. What it means is, for me, I'll give you an example. I've been using AI in my marketing. So I wasn't paying a full-time marketing person before, but now I have AI generating content and editing videos and doing about 20 hours a week for me that I haven't been paying someone to do before. So it's not like someone lost a job, right? This is just activity that wasn't done before. But now what's happened is it's created more demand for the humans in my business. So it's created more work for myself and Claudia and Lynn that works with me. So our net human activity revenues was actually a growth that benefited us. So AI did it. It technically kind of replaced a job because I could have found someone to do that. But the reality is it didn't actually, no one lost a job, but 3 people are generating more revenues. There's more opportunities. Right. So I know, long rant around that is, do you see that happening in marketing as well, where these economies of productivity and increased production within these big marketing organizations, is that going to create more work for humans?
I don't know. And like the statistics you quoted, the 97, I'm deeply suspicious. Like between now and the end of 2025, anyone who says anything other than I have no idea is perhaps pulling your leg. And like 97, not 96, not 98, but 97. It's like, and what are these jobs? I don't even know what these jobs are. I don't know whether the report described what those jobs are, the new ones. So I don't know. I don't know, but I mean, I love your story of how you are using AI to, in a sense, create a job that creates more opportunity for others on the team. I think that's a fantastic use case. My concern is that, hey, in our kind of capitalist society, a lot of companies very much focused on profit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what are the profit numbers for the end of the next quarter? And there is going to be a huge temptation to, take the human jobs and hand them over to AI because they're faster and the price is almost negligible. It's like pennies in the dollar.
Absolutely.
So my concern is that too many companies will jump on that bandwagon and let people go, replace them with AI. And I get it in terms of the cost benefits and the productivity benefits and not having to pay for healthcare and vacations and things like that. But I think that'll be followed by a bit of a backlash. I think there'll be all kinds of backlashes, but I think companies will find that removing too many humans from this process is not going to give them the result they actually want.
No, I think we look at that. It's unchecked algorithms is what drive, and all of a sudden there isn't the nuance. And one of the things that I talk about is the right brain sales revolution is what I call it, which is really about creative selling, leadership, the ability to politically navigate an organization, to break the rules, to innovate on a new product that doesn't exist, to help a client out, to tell a joke, to help people in your community, all those things that actually salespeople should be doing more of, and less cut and paste and less, sitting and emailing people ad nauseum all day and phoning people with the same pitch all day. That stuff should be replaced, I think, because it's not value added. Most salespeople do it and they're just praying for the day they no longer have to do that. And they want to do the more human-centric, connection, emotional, intelligent oriented stuff. And so I think that, we look at within an organization, I can replace salespeople or some sales activities, but not the important people parts of the process. And that's where I think people are missing the opportunity. Like, I want to hire and train for right brain sales skills, right? Because those, along with technical knowledge, is what the new sales leader looks like. And I'm sure marketing largely mirrors that, I would assume.
I think so. And I think a big factor here is trust.
Yeah.
Is that if I know you and I have a relationship with you as a supplier to my business, then we've built some trust over the years. Mm-hmm. Do I trust, these models? Do I trust ChatGPT or Llama 3 to take care of my marketing communications, my outbound communications, my sales communications? Do I really? I mean, the answer's got to be no. I love the productivity benefit, but if I'm smart about it, to me, a lot of it comes down to trust.
Yeah.
Am I going to trust these systems not to damage my reputation, not to damage my brand, not to say something that is off-brand, not to upset a long-standing client? Can I trust these systems to that extent? And I think the answer is probably not. So And I think when you talk about salespeople wanting to lean in and do the good stuff, the right brain kind of selling, I think those are the salespeople and the marketers who are going to thrive. Is the people who really kind of lean into what it is to be human and to have a relationship.
Yeah.
I was talking to someone the other day he's also on the sales side of things. And he was talking to a client who was interacting with the supplier and suddenly realized, like 5 steps in, that all the communications coming from the supplier were created by AI.
Yes.
His feeling was a sense of betrayal. He felt betrayed. He thought he was interacting with a person, but they fooled him. He wasn't. He was interacting with a bot. And so there's enormous damage that can be done.
I would agree with that, because especially, one of the big things, in sales process is knowing who your top 20% clients or target market is, and for me, that's a vice president of sales for a company that has at least 20 salespeople and is doing like 50 million plus a year in revenues. And there's actually, when I do a search across Canada, that number is in the thousands, but not in the tens of thousands.
Right.
And so I can't just automate that process at the risk of alienating like 70 or 80% of those senior salespeople or leaders either. And that trust factor where you're not really transparent about the use of AI. It's different if it's reached out and in the bottom it says, hey, by the way, this is Shane Gibson's AI assistant that's reaching out to connect for meeting. That may be novel for some people, but that they're like, hey, that's kind of cool what they're doing. And there's a talk to human button, there is a lot in a lot of chat bots now, right? I think that's better. And even in my blog posts or my recent podcast, or they'll see it in this episode, is in the body of the podcast within the first paragraph, it says that this blog post has been written with the assistance of AI. And so is the video editing. And I think it's important to begin to have that transparency, because people, are fine with you automating the mundane and making sure that, maybe your grammar's decent and that you don't miss key points. No one's expecting me to read the entire transcript of this and then write a blog post. But with that said, to try to pull one over on them, I think is a danger. I want to kind of circle back to, and I thought this was interesting. I thought I'd share this with you. And I pulled this right on my slides for my keynote on AI in the future of sales, but it's actually some stats from Google. And let me get this, or Salesforce, excuse me. And they've got a study called the Generative AI Snapshot Research, the AI Divide. And it's an ongoing study that I would suggest that listeners even dig up and look at, of 4,000 people across the United States, UK, Australia, and India. And they look at AI use over several years. But what I thought about was interesting is with salespeople on how they're really missing the big picture. So in the study, they polled salespeople and said, hey, what are you likely to use AI for right now? And they said, 82% said basic content creation, 74% said analyzing market data, and 71% said automating personalized sales communications, right? So this is kind of easy button stuff. They're like, how do I press the easy button? And then what they expect to transform their roles, like how they expect AI to transform their roles, they said 51% said helping to generate sales reports, 48% said basic content creation, and 47% said analyzing market data. And what's missing here is the big picture around actually using AI to make me smarter. Like, can I augment myself by giving me the right data at the right time? Could I use it to coach me to be a better writer versus just get it to write for me? Right. And most of them miss what the big opportunity really is, right? And I think that's interesting. Are you seeing this in marketing where people want to lean towards like, how do I just push a button versus how do I use this to make me better? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I am. And I'm seeing some unfortunate uses. I was reading some feedback. I think it was on Upwork.com. So a platform where copywriters, open up a profile and then they companies put out a job and people then submit estimates and proposals. And on the client side, the people hiring freelancers through Upwork, they were like revolting because they were saying, hey, we put out this job and then we get these proposals back from copywriters and they all sound the same. They're all being written by ChatGPT. So all the freelancers sound the same.
Yeah.
And they said it's like they got this wave of low quality nonsense, and so that's a really bad use. So I often say to people, whether it's in marketing or in sales, is don't overuse these tools in any kind of customer or client facing interaction. Be yourself.
Yeah.
By all means, use the tool to prepare. And so going back to your point on working with them, that's what we've talked about, this the collaborative approach to using AI, where you actually treat it in a sense almost like as a co-intelligence, and go back and forth. And you say, hey, like it took me a while when I was first using ChatGPT in late 2022. And it was amazing. And you could finally converse like with a piece of software in natural language, which was just mind-blowing at that. We're used to it now, but it was mind-blowing at the beginning. And then my mind was blown a second time when I realized I could actually collaborate and converse with this tool, this model, and say, hey, what do you think? How would you say this? How would you better present this? And then you sit back and it comes out with an outcome. And I thought, wow, because normally like our experience with software or even devices, if I press the B on my keyboard, a B comes up on the screen every time. It's never a C, it's never an F. It's like, or if usually with software, I give it a command, the output is the same every time. With these tools, they're different. It's not a regular software and it takes people a while. I may be getting a bit off track, but the idea of changing your mindset, that this is not just a tool to do what you instruct, like write me an email too. Yeah. It's a tool with which you can collaborate and become better at what you do by using the tool as a partner.
Absolutely. And I think that partnership piece is vital to look at it like that. And I think later in episode 3, we're going to get into actually talking a little bit about, for me, even like sales technology workflows and about, how to actually formalize that process so you can duplicate that conversation, right? So if you found a good series of steps to produce an output, you actually, you could even record that process actually using a Loom or something and then load it up into your library with your team, and then they can use that. So I think there's some thoughts around like partnering, but developing even processes behind partnering. I would guess that that's the next iteration of AI tools, is someone will build one that actually helps you do that. So I'm looking forward to my royalties if they hear this podcast.
It's probably already.
They're already working on it, I'm sure. So next question and topic is, and this is sort of a bit of a preamble here, is it's interesting how similar our collective ethos is. And this is what kind of got us excited, was that I like to say that I help sales professionals drive results by combining empathy with technology, right? That's my piece. And you have a very similar ethos, which I'd love for you to share with our audience, and then expand upon that outlook. Like, what does that really mean?
Well, my approach is basically looking at emotional intelligence, of which there are kind of four domains. One is self-awareness of your own emotions. The other is self-management. How well do we manage our emotions? The third is, I've forgotten the term, but basically it's being aware and being empathetic to other people and their emotions. And then the fourth domain is wrapping this up as becoming more emotionally intelligent. And it's amazing how, if you ask people, hey, are you empathetic? If you ask 100 people, are you empathetic? Do you consider yourself to be very empathetic? 90 of them will probably say, yes, I do. And it's probably the other way around. There's probably 10 out of 100 people that are truly empathetic.
100%.
In sales and marketing, we tend to, we want to broadcast ourselves, our message, our key points. And that's the opposite of emotional intelligence, like broadcasting at an audience or at an individual.
Yes.
So the two key elements of emotional intelligence as a whole, I think, is incredibly important. Not only, I mean, I apply it to writing, I apply it to working with artificial intelligence, but I also apply it to our relationships with our customers and our clients and our prospects. Mm-hmm. Is be more emotionally intelligent in your interactions overall. And this is, all kinds of things happen here. One is that it does separate you from what an AI can do, because generally AI is not, at least not yet, very good at that.
Yeah.
But it also changes how we communicate, the choices we make. And I think out of all of emotional intelligence, the two big takeaways for me is learn to listen. Again, are you a good listener? Sure, I'm a good listener. You're probably not. Most of us are terrible listeners. That's an incredible skill to pick up, to be a good listener. And the other one is, are you empathetic? You know, do you empathize with other people's situations? Can you walk in their shoes and feel how they feel about it? And everyone says, sure, I can. And I say, well, okay, let's say you're a Democrat and he's a Republican. Are you still feeling empathetic? Oh, well, not so much now. So feeling empathetic when you agree with someone is easy. Feeling empathetic when you don't agree with someone is very different. And that's what true empathy is to be able to walk in the shoes of someone who perhaps doesn't always agree with you. So being a big listener and being empathetic, I think for marketers, for sales, are perhaps the two most important elements of emotional intelligence. So it adds a layer of differentiation, which I think is essential to all marketing and sales, is we don't want to present ourselves as the same as everyone or anyone else. We want that point of differentiation. So I think emotional intelligence can help us there. And it also leans back into what we were talking about with trust, is that if you talk to me and you feel I'm hearing you, I'm listening, it's incredibly powerful when you think, hey, this guy he hears me. Mm-hmm. He's paused, he's silent, and he's actually hearing what I have to say. That's enormously powerful. That's not a strength of AI, but it can be a strength of humans. So it's that collaboration again of all the productivity benefits and the analytical benefits of AI, plus that deeply human element of being empathetic, of listening to people, and then adding these two things together.
Yeah, I even think about outbound email and empathy. Like we had within an organization, and this happened more than once, multiple organizations I've worked in. There's a salesperson totally excited because they used ChatGPT or Claude or something else to write an outbound email sequence to reach out to their key accounts. So they no longer have to sit down and write their emails. And now they can do 100 emails in an hour instead of 7. And they're super excited. But what they're sending to the client is not client-centric or seeing the world through the client's eyes. Because if I really put myself in the seat of the reader, who maybe my first email is the senior vice president of a telecommunications company, and the next email is to the vice president of sales for a family-owned manufacturer, and I send them both the same email, and the first line is about my company instead of them, and there's no context, then I've probably missed the opportunity to gain their attention. And it's evident that it's actually this marketing piece or this email, this outbound email piece, whether it's an existing client or a potential one, is actually about me. It's about getting the appointment for me to sell you something versus what I observed about you and what made me interested in you to reach out. And that's something that, AI doesn't quite get. You can give it a formula, but as a salesperson, it's the ones that are like, hey, this is good enough. This looks great. And they miss the nuance in the fact that this email is all about them, shows a lack of emotional intelligence and empathy applied to that outbound process. And so this is where, someone says to me, I've hired this person and they're not emotionally intelligent and they're not empathetic. Do we have a program for them? And I'm like, emotional intelligence and empathy development is a 10-year project. So depending upon how bad they are at it, you may be better to move them to another part of the company. At least that's my opinion. But there are some core rules we can teach. Go ahead, Nick. You look like you're going to say something there.
So many things, but one of the things that happens to me is I get emails from people wanting to sell me services, right?
Yes.
And the biggest mistake I almost always see is the emails are too long.
Yeah.
15, 20 lines long. And it's like, again, this is empathy. They haven't put themselves in my shoes and thought, you know what, Nick probably gets a lot of these emails every day. This is my first contact. I'm a stranger to Nick. He doesn't know me. And if they thought that way, they think, you know what, I'm a stranger. He's busy. He gets lots of pitches. He's not going to read 20 lines. I should make this 4 lines. Just the opening gambit of a conversation that hopefully will continue. So that's a classic example of not being empathetic, of not understanding the reality of your prospect's life and workflow and stuff like that. And now you can instruct your AI to keep it under 5 lines, but again, you've got to bring that human empathy to that collaboration with the AI. The other thing that had me really wanting to jump in was when you were talking, whatever it was, 10 years. There's a short game and there's a long game here.
Yes.
If I'm playing the short game, I can automate emails to 100,000 people, like 5 emails a day. Bam, bam. I won't read them. I won't check them. I won't edit them. Like AI can do the whole thing. And I'll probably have an amazing quarter. But what I'll be doing in the process, quarter by quarter, is I will be burning reputation. I will be burning trust. Because somewhere along the line, they'll say, hey, frequency is too high. This feels wooden and dead. This feels like a broadcast, just sales straight in my face. And I'm not loving it. And I'm going to unsubscribe, or I'm going to mark it as spam or whatever. So again, companies, I think, have to be very, very careful about use of AI in terms of productivity, in terms of volume. Because yes, you may get an amazing quarter or 2 or 3. But what happens to your list, or what happens to your audience or your prospect file after that when they get fed up with this stuff? And humans are very, very good at recognizing the difference between a truly human contact and something either automated or too salesy, too pushy.
Templated, generic, right? And there's so much noise out there and there's actually a lot of lack of empathy and emotional intelligence goes into outbound or even warm client nurturing, like people, there's a lot of people who are hitting that easy button. And I think that what's interesting is that, and I think this is actually our next question leading into it. So versus me ranting a bit more, I'm going to lead into our third question is, if us and our competitors are typing the same prompts into the same system, our content, our outbound messages, our blog posts, our ads all sound the same. It's a bunch of noise, right? People start to cancel it out. Messy humans, as you call us, Nick, can be the differentiator. And so how can humanness help us avoid that sameness trap that you and I were just talking about?
So I was actually, I think a few days ago, I came across a new kind of copywriting AI tool for companies. And so the whole team can sign up. And it was like, here's the model we're going to use. Here is your prompt library. And here is your template library. So templates for emails, for blog posts, for social media updates, whatever it is. So it was all library, and using. So you got everyone in that team is using the same model and the same prompt library and the same template library. And like you say, then the output is naturally the same. If you
Yes.
use the same prompts in the same models, it's not going to be identical because they always kind of output something slightly different, but there will be a sameness. So that's why I talk about the sameness trap
Mhm.
that people fall into. So again, you got to be very careful of this short game, long game, because short game is very attractive. Long game, all of a sudden, it's like, well, hang on, we're a 20-year-old company. We've invested maybe $10 million in branding, in creating a unique brand for ourselves. And all of a sudden, we sound like our five closest competitors.
Yeah.
This is the worst outcome possible. You can't possibly want that, whatever the productivity benefits. So this is where we bring in the messy human, because
Mhm.
as humans, we're messy in the way that these models are not. Now, they're messy in their own way, making mistakes, hallucinating, things like that. But it's not the same as us. We, as humans, hey, it's almost like when you go on a date, it's almost like the other person's messiness. It's their imperfections, it's their vulnerabilities, it's their little foibles that actually can make someone the most really attractive to you. It's not the fact that that they went to Harvard or blah, 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 blah. It's those very human qualities. And often it's the imperfections that we're drawn to. And that's a very human thing, to be drawn to imperfection, to be drawn to mess. And then it ties back to emotional intelligence, to recognize those human qualities in others. And we crave it. We crave it. I did a very, very short video recently of an experience when I went to, we're selling our house, so I had to go and get some paint and stuff like that. And I went to this big box store. I got my paint and my rollers and my brushes, and I went to checkout, and it's an automated checkout. So you scan it, bag it, pay for it, and you're off you go. And I felt disappointed. And it's because I was missing that interaction with the cashier. And that interaction is what, 10 words shared with a complete stranger who I'll perhaps never see again. But it matters.
Yes.
It matters. It was enough to make me feel disappointed that I'd missed it. And I went shopping for groceries today, and I barely recognized the cashiers, but kind of. And it's a moment. It's just that human connection. So that, I think, is what we need to try to overlay when we use AI, is bring in this human element, this vulnerability, our messy edges, our desire, our need, our urgent need for connection, almost on a daily basis. It's like we want at least one human interaction a day. Otherwise, we don't feel comfortable. We don't feel good.
I think that's really in line with what I've seen, even in like business to business buyers. McKinsey did a couple of years ago, so it's a little bit of a while ago, but they looked at post pandemic, like where are buyers today? Are they still wanting to buy remote because they got pretty comfortable with it? Because a lot of sales organizations as well were like, oh, great, we don't have to go do this remote stuff anymore. Let's send our road warriors back out on the road to sell and go meet with our clients. And what they found was that about 30% actually want to just buy from us through a platform now, like even business to business buyers to some degree. But another 30% want to access those same digital platforms and tools to be more educated as a buyer, but they really want a human assist. And another 30% or third, the final third, whatever that is, would much prefer that human to human interaction altogether, like not to touch the technology. So what we see is that even in a world where AI could do it for us, the buyer, even though we're all excited as sellers that I can automate my life, the buyer's like, that's great, but that's not what I want. I want to do the mundane and all the research and maybe talk to your chatbot to figure out what I want. But at the end of at the final hour, I want you to parachute in, connect with me as a human being, affirm my purchase is the right decision, give me some coaching, or I want you just to show up in my office. And so I think that that's a really good piggyback there, is that as the buyer, they're not wanting to be handled just by AI. And we've seen the negative feedback, whether it's those personal checkouts, which isn't really AI, but it's an automation.
It's automation.
Or it's that person who's just ticked that you tricked them into thinking it was a human emailing them when it wasn't. I think that's still there. And I think there's a time and place for it. But the key factor is then we can't just be mediocre at the human skills. I believe because that's our really only competitive advantage over AI is that we've got to double down on building our emotional intelligence, our communication skills, our creativity, our innovative perspective, our own human generative capacity to create new marketing ideas, new sales approaches, problem solve, be aware of challenges. So I think those aren't going to be replaced. In fact, those are going to become more important, but you've got to be really sharp at them. You can't be because before, if you're kind of good at everything from the client research, the prospecting, the cut and paste emails, and then you're sort of good at rapport building, you can kind of limp through. But if all that other stuff's been done for you, and the only way you're judged by your employer and your customers is by that human interaction, then you better be really good at it, right? And that's for me, I think, is the dichotomy in there.
So that's like that. The killer app is that collaboration.
Yeah.
And so coming back to earlier in the conversation, when you're talking about you're using AI not to replace the job in your business, but to create more opportunity and more work for your team, and perhaps having to expand that team at some point. So that's the kind of collaboration that has a very positive outcome for everyone. So it can be. So again, messy humans, I think we're looking at a messy future for the next few years while companies try to integrate, AI into their workflow, into their work practices.
And we're going to make a lot of mistakes. Like, we both had the opportunity to be, involved in the dawn of civilization, so to speak, for social media, at least. And that was, I wrote 2 books on social media marketing, back in 2009 and 2010. And there were a lot of mistakes made, a lot of failed experiments, a lot of different ideas of what social media could and couldn't do. I think, unfortunately, the dark side of social was way underestimated, but it's become an integral part of what we do. But I guess we made a lot of assumptions that were incorrect. And I think AI will be the same. I think the people that won, though, you're right, were willing to get messy and experiment and make mistakes and get creative. So with that said, kind of wrapping up this episode, is we want to talk about each share maybe an AI tool insight. And Nick, many people are familiar with ChatGPT, but it's one of many generative AI platforms, such as Claude or Meta AI. You've done a deep dive into several from the context of the type of work you do and the people you help. Could you share with us like what you've learned, any fundamental best practices, any tips for our listeners?
Well, I've mostly used GPT-4. I use Gemini. Interestingly, I find some people say this about Claude 3, but I find the output from Gemini sometimes feels a little more human and conversational. And I've heard others say the same about Claude 3. I've been using Meta AI recently, which I find to be pretty good, or pretty much on a par with GPT-4. I haven't used. I've used Llama. I've used Llama 3. I'm trying to think so many of them. But I'll tell you what. What I use a lot is I'm coming back to OpenAI, but I use the OpenAI Playground, which is a kind of a light developer interface. And what it allows me there is to create. Like if I have a particular company with a particular audience, I will describe the company. I will describe the voice that I want the AI to speak in. I will describe the consumer. And then I will save that as a preset. And now I have a drop. So I could have 5 clients, or I could have 5 different companies. And I've done all this background, here's the voice, here's your expertise, here's your prospect, here's what you need to talk about. And I'll have different descriptions for each company or each project, and I have them as presets. So I love that because I can just go in and I don't have to rewrite anything or copy and paste something. I just click on the preset, there it is, and I just then put in my request for write a blog post or write an email or write a social media update. So from a productivity point of view, I really enjoy the OpenAI Playground interface there. I find that helpful.
That's something that I haven't even kicked the tires on. I've been looking at it, but as you describe this more and more, I start to think that maybe I need to take one of your Be More Human.ai courses to look at these tools more specifically, because I feel like actually that's one of the hacks for anybody listening to this program is like you can trial and error a lot of this stuff, but there's people like Nick who've got a very focused area of expertise in using it for things like copywriting and branding and marketing, that you can save yourself a lot of time taking a course or getting a demo than trying to figure it out on your own. Because sure, it's all on TikTok and YouTube, but you still got to string it all together and make all the mistakes. So I thought I'd share, my last piece here is for my AI tool. I just wanted to share how I use my humanness and voice to create original content for LinkedIn while leveraging the power of AI. I wish I could find the tweet. I actually looked for it. I can't find it. So maybe it wasn't the tweet. Maybe I dreamed it. But somebody said that great writing comes from great thinking. And I think that great selling also comes from great thinking. And I think that human piece is very important, because if we just put the same prompt in as all our competitors, and I've got 300 people in this marketplace who also do sales training and have written books on sales and keynote, then we all have the same looking blog post with the same little characters and everything else, and you can spot it a mile away. And it's also watered down because it's pulling advice out of this data set that everybody else has access to. And a lot of it's conventional old school sales advice. So for me, I think a lot of salespeople are a lot like me, where I'm a pretty slow typer and writer. I'm good at writing. I'm slow, but I'm pretty good at talking, faster talking. I'm quick to my quick thoughts, and I can articulate myself pretty well. At least I think I can. And so what I found is, like, if I'm going to write a blog post 1 or 2 a week, or LinkedIn post 1 or 2 a week on LinkedIn or more, there's a couple ways to do it. I can sit down and give like the topic headings and give it to ChatGPT, and then it's going to write me a word soup post, which kind of sounds good, but it's not going to, for my target market, it's not going to give them enough depth and value to really show my differentiation. It just won't. The other one is, of course, I can sit down and write it, which takes me a long time. So what I've been doing is I've been using my iPhone and my notepad, and then my voice to text. And so I'll literally take my iPhone, I'll create a new notes document, I'll press the little microphone on the bottom corner, and I'll just talk this little bit of a rant out. Like, here's something that sales leaders should think about when they're recruiting business-to-business sales professionals that sell into the enterprise. There's 3 major things. And then I'll go through and just talk about the 3 major things. But it's just taking a transcription of this. Then I cut and paste that, and I drop it into ChatGPT. And I say, take this transcript and correct the grammar, but keep it in the original tone and cadence, and format it for a LinkedIn post. And it'll automatically take that, correct it, create the paragraphs, format it, and then I can post that into LinkedIn. I might change it a little bit, but I find it's about 95% of the way there. If it's taken just my verbal rant and then corrected it, rewritten it, and post it, I can't ask it to expand it by 30% or add another thought in. But what's interesting is that it's been really, really effective for me. It's been creating engaging content. It also cuts my time down by like 70, 80% on writing a LinkedIn post, but it's my voice. And so I know I'm not pulling one over on somebody. I'm just getting AI to help me do what I do a little better and a little faster. And so that's kind of my tip, is that as a sales professional, or anybody who's creating content on a platform like LinkedIn, start with your own voice and let AI correct it. But also make sure, I always also put one caveat: don't make it wordy or flowery, because otherwise they'll add extra stuff in. And I find that alone works as an input, as an output. And so now, when you see my posts, it was my thoughts, but I definitely have help from ChatGPT to correct it and put it out. But it makes sure that I'm consistently putting content out and getting my voice out there.
I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, because I'm also, I've written for a living for 40 years, and I'm the world's worst typist. So.
I don't know. 3 books. I've got like 4 published books, but then I think I've written at least 50 manuals in my life, and I don't know why I never took a typing course. But now I'm pretty happy that I can do voice to text and then use Grammarly or another tool to correct the writing, and that's pretty helpful. So, Nick, thank you so much for connecting with me. I'm excited about our next couple episodes. Our next 2 episodes on really how to power your business with AI and emotional intelligence are going to be focused on, one, keeping humans in the driver's seat with AI. So how to stay in the driver's seat, how to collaborate with AI essentially effectively, because we've talked about that a little bit, but we'll give you specific processes around that. and then how to lead and execute with AI, which we're going to kind of dig deeper into how to make it part of your daily work, your business process, and to be able to scale and be more competitive as a result. So again, you can find at least these first 3 episodes on closingbigger.net, but of course, Spotify and wherever else you listen to podcasts. You can find Nick Usborne at nickosborne.com, as well as bemorehuman.ai. And again, you can find me at closingbigger.net and salesacademy.ca. Looking forward to our next podcast. Thank you very much, Nick, for joining us.
Pleasure. Always fun talking about it.